Savage Nation.
Oh, how modern that is. So computer literate, so Twitter-like, so BlackBerry-ish, so with it.
On Hot Talk 560 KSFO.
Welcome back to the Savage Nation. Take 4. We are now 33 minutes after the hour with technical problems from the top of the hour until now. We're going to try one more time to see if we can make everything run smoothly. I've been on a remote location now for several days. I prepared all morning, but unfortunately I haven't been able to get any calls up. We've had feedback problems. And here are the 3 questions if you've just joined us on the Savage Nation. They're very serious times that we are living in. Should the U.S. send weapons to Ukraine or American troops? You know my answer on that. Are you crazy? Why do liberals like Michael Bloomberg fear guns and gun owners? I think you pretty much know the answer to that. Why a psycho like Michael Bloomberg would spend $50 million of his own money to try to take the guns out of your hands. Now, while Bloomberg is spending $50 million of his own money to take away your Second Amendment, there's a movie director by the name, I forget his name, I can't even remember it. He produces the worst pollution in the history of the human race. Every movie is either pornography or guns or murder, and he's against guns. And he's in the White House every other week. A good friend of Obama, in other words. He's doing a movie against the NRA as well. So the question is now, what do we do with all the Larry Davids of the world, the psychos from Brooklyn and Queens who made it big and now run the whole country, including the presidency? What do we do with these lunatics who are now trying to take away our First Amendment, our Second Amendment, our Fourth Amendment? God knows what they want tomorrow. There's not enough power in the world for these psychopaths. They think that everything is something to be mocked. That's question only number 2, but there are other questions. Number 3, why is Harry Reid so obsessed with the Nevada ranch? I've done a lot of research on this subject. And you say, well, I've heard that there's more to it. I've heard that the ranch is sitting on land that he wants to use for solar development. Well, that's partly true. What you don't know is that Harry Reid is obsessed with this case for another reason. Why is he so obsessed with a small rancher who has not paid grazing fees when the country is overrun with illegal aliens who have not paid taxes? Did you hear? Why does that lowlife Senator Chuck Schumer get involved publicly when a New York company or 5 are not paying any taxes at all? Why? There are 100 million Americans no longer working. There are people on entitlements in numbers greater than those working. There are more Americans on food stamps than the number of people, the number of women working in America. Russians are on the border or inside Ukraine, and Harry Reid is obsessed with the B.L.M. ranch issue. Why? Why was it almost Waco or Ruby Ridge? Why was Senator Reid's involvement brought up at the last minute by Prison Planet, that website, and instantly, within seconds or minutes of Reid's name being attached to the raid, the bowel movement, the bowel movement, the B.L.M. decided to back down and leave. Why? Don't you think that there's a coincidence here? Well, many of you have read that a $5 billion Chinese solar project backed by Harry Reid and his son was recently shelved. But what you don't know is what I'm about to tell you. Are you ready for this? Harry Reid is involved in multiple solar and wind projects throughout the Nevada desert. And he's making an attempt to grab another piece of the land. Now, that's one of the issues. But there's another element to why old Harry Reid is so involved between the cowboys and the government. I told you this. I tried to tell you this the other day. The Bundy Ranch in Nevada is 140 miles from the Molycorp mine. Now, you don't know what the Molycorp mine is. The Molycorp mine is a rare earth resource development mine. Rare earths are found mainly in China. They have cornered the market. Rare earths are necessary for our computer chips, primarily in our military weaponry. Now, I have chills up my spine by telling you there is treason and treachery at the highest level in the United States of America right now. You have people who would sell this country down the river for 10 cents. Now, I'm not saying that that's what this is about, but it's interesting to me that the Bundy Ranch is only 140 miles from the Molycorp mine. Now, it's also interesting to me that the energy connection, the Molycorp mine, Rare earths are all involved, and I have to get into this in a little more detail a little later on. But you should also know that the U.S. government itself is involved in this conspiracy to undermine our national security, in my opinion. Because the U.S. government did not say a word when Molycorp, that mine in California near the Bundy property, when Molycorp acquired a major foreign rare earth processor with factories in China, and that Molycorp now ships our most defense-critical heavy rare earth and rare earth magnet materials for processing to the Chinese facilities. I don't think you know any of this. I think you must understand that this show that I'm doing today, despite the problems, is perhaps one of the most important shows I've ever done in my life. We have reached a point of no return. And the cowboys facing off the cowards in the B.L.M, the bowel movement of the U.S. government. The cowboys were representing the United States of America. And the punks and cowards with their vests and their machine guns ready to shoot women and children were called off at the last minute only when Harry Reid's name was tied to a solar plant tied to adjacent land. But you didn't hear the rest of the story. And I told you a little bit of the rest of the story. I told you about a thing called rare earth metals. I told you that there's a mine in California near the Bundy property, the ranch in question, that purchased a major foreign rare earth processor with factories in nowhere else but China. And that this mine now ships our most defense-critical heavy rare earth and rare earth magnet materials to China for processing. To make matters worse, our Department of Defense, under Hagel the Bagel, says this is a victory because it's reduced the price of these rare earth metals for the U.S. military. Do you have any idea how far this goes? Do you understand that we have been played by China? Or do you understand that we're being played by our own senators and secretaries for a dime? Do you understand that last year this administration approved the sale of A123's lithium-ion battery technology to China? Now you say, what do I care about that? That technology was developed after hundreds of millions of U.S. taxpayer-funded loan guarantees were spent. And then when the company went into bankruptcy, the Chinese company called Wangzing, W-A-N-Z-I-A-N-G, which is closely tied to the Communist Party leadership, moved in and purchased the company and technology for pennies on the dollar. By the way, this company, Wangzing, invests heavily in Detroit and Chicago. And according to an expert in the field, Richard Daley and a representative of Rahm Emanuel were en route to China to meet with Wangzing leadership on the very day that the Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States, CFIUS, approved the deal in what was supposed to be a secret process. The expert on this is a group called Strategic Materials Advisory Council, and they are onto this. This is the biggest story of your lifetime, and you heard more tonight on the Savage Nation, or today on the Savage Nation, than you've learned from every other radio show put together, despite all of the problems in getting me on the air, and I assume I'm on the air. I don't know if I'm on the air. Thus far, I'm still talking in a room. I have no idea if the show is being broadcast, but I will keep going. And I'll go to the next level, and I'll try to take some calls. George on line 6 on WJR. Go ahead, George.
Michael, can I at least say God bless you for your courage and your wisdom? And
hold on. Before we go on, did you hear what I just said? Was I broadcasting about the rare earth metals? Did you hear all that, George?
Loud and clear. Here in Detroit, and I can give you some ground information, you're 100% correct. And in regard to Harry Reid, these autocrats, these self-serving people need to understand that we, the people, are not going to just roll over for him. We're very intelligent.
Well, I think that the cowboy standoff was the beginning of, I'm telling you what I'm going to say is very controversial. I have been authoring a book for a year now called Stop the Coming Civil War. The publisher thought that that was a little too hot to handle. When she saw the cowboys standing off against the cowards in the bowel movement, the B.L.M., she said, holy God, Savage, you were right. I said that was the American Tea Party. That was the Boston Tea Party. And unless I have to control myself. Unless the gangsters in Congress are stopped, there will be a civil war in this country.
Absolutely correct. Now, the good news is that we do triumph. We still have to go through a couple of rough times. The Prince of the Air has been kind of interfering with your broadcast show today a little bit. But again, I've got reports that the Bowel men were actually even some paid, well, let's just call them mercenaries.
Where from? Were they from the Ukraine or China?
Yeah, exactly. Let's just bring them over here. And
what did he do? He brought some Ukrainian thugs in and some People's Liberation Army thugs and put them in B.L.M. uniforms or Postal Service uniforms and gave them machine guns with hollow point bullets?
Yeah, exactly. Now, to keep it on the light side, if the cattle had come across from Mexico, perhaps we'd have a whole different situation in regard to what we would do with that. We'd probably give them some protected territory, set up some little barns.
Look, I would like to go along with the humor in your voice, but there's no humor in this. The American people, this is a tinderbox. And at the same time that this is happening, the American Tea Party was finally seen. The Boston Tea Party was finally seen with guns, ready to fire. And it happened last week. And it was Harry Reid behind the bowel movement, the B.L.M. people, the cowards who should be thrown in prison for doing this. People said, oh, they'll never do this. They'll never shoot on American people. Of course they would. Of course they will. Of course the new military will fire on the American people. Why do you think that Obama has decapitated the entire leadership of the military? And why do you think a lout like Michael Bloomberg would say, I'm spending $50 million to take away your Second Amendment, literally 2 days after this standoff? Now, I've been off the air for quite a few days. I went off the air last Wednesday was my last show. I was off Thursday, Friday, Monday, Tuesday. The first half hour of this show was like flying a plane that lost its altimeter. It lost its radar. One of the engines quit on a 2-engine jet. And this plane was plummeting to the ground. I pulled it out 30 minutes into the descent, and I believe we're now flying straight. When I come back, I will continue to take your calls on these topics and others. Hold on now. Again, I want to give you the phone number because there's one open line, 855-407-282. Why is Harry Reid so obsessed with the Nevada ranch? Why do libs like Bloomberg fear guns and gun owners? Should the U.S. send weapons to the Ukraine? And hold on one more minute. What occurred to me was a day or two after the standoff in the Nevada desert, all of a sudden a Nazi was released who goes and kills people outside a Jewish center in Kansas. He kills 2 Christians, by the way, and then 1 Jewish person. And before it even is over, within hours, we have his complete dossier. We know who he is. We know who he is, where he comes from. We know he said Heil Hitler. And strangely enough, that organization called the Southern Poverty Law Center released all the information about this Nazi literally within a few hours of the event occurring. It seemed to me it was a seamless connection between the Nazi being released and him going on a shooting spree outside 2 Jewish organizations in the Midwest. And so what am I getting at? What I am getting at is perfectly possible to me that he was a madman under control of a government agent, probably who infiltrated his little cell, made believe he was one of them, and told the man now is the time to get those Jews. Why? Why would they want to have a shooting at a Jewish center literally a day after the government backed off from American cowboys? I'll let you think about that. I'll take a quick break, and I'll come right back on the Savage Nation.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
The Savage Nation is sponsored by SwissAmerica.com, the only company I, Michael Savage, trust to buy my gold and silver from. SwissAmerica.com.